have this very exciting panel with almost the stalwarts in the telecom space across different spaces with us. So without much ado, what I'll do is I'll jump right into it. I'll start with a small icebreaker session where, the hope is that the audience gets to understand your background and also some of the interesting things from your overall experience. So Alexander, I will come to you first. You had almost a quarter century of experience, most of it with Rohde and Schwarz. You've looked at multiple roles across product management, as subdivision lead, and multiple others during this journey. You're currently heading the wireless communications segment, especially on the test and measurement division. If you were to reflect on this, significant duration at Rohde and Schwarz, what part of this journey would you say has fascinated you the most?
So thank you for the introduction, Sidhant. The quarter of the century really makes me feel old.
Yeah, that wasn't taken, but yeah.
I'm clearly in here to also see 6G in the market. So, yeah, I mean, as a physicist, I'm quite fascinated by innovation and by working on the leading edge of technology. And what's quite cool at Rohde and Schwarz is that we are able really to talk on eye-to-eye level with our customers. And one example was a couple of years ago with the leading network operator. They had frequencies quite close to digital TV, so LTE network rollout. And they, on the other hand, they were pretty close to some government restricted bands. And obviously their license was, don't touch my government bands, otherwise we'll switch you off. So they had an urgent need to test all their mobile phones that they don't tap into unallowed spectrum. And we worked with them very closely to find a specific scenario with LTE base station simulator with some TV signals being present at really high power levels, where we internally at Rohde and Schwarz were able to tap on our broadcast division for the TV signal simulation and to build some custom hardware just to realize a specific scenario that tests mobiles just to relieve them from the internal pressure that they were going to be switched off. And this was really a nice challenge, working with the customer, working internally here, developing something that wasn't there before. And for me, something that really shows, okay, here is an opportunity to show value as Rohde and Schwarz for such a big customer.
Yeah, perfect, Alexander. Thank you for that very good introduction and that very interesting example. Bernd, I would love to move to you. You had a similar, length of experience, and again, this time primarily at BT. Again, you also, toyed with multiple functions. You've looked at sales, you've looked at IT, and you're currently the Chief Technology Officer. What do you believe, maybe in the same vein as what Alexander mentioned, what is your biggest motivator in continuing this significant journey with BT?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for listening. I think for me, the most fascinating from the telco industry is always, it has always been the engine of connecting people, being social in a way, bringing people together. And in the COVID crisis, we saw what really that means actually to anyone. And this is also why our company slogan is Connect for Good. Yeah. So how can we use telecommunication service to make the world better? World better means more or less anything that the UN Charter has on their 16 demands, getting education for everyone, getting people closer to each other, having social responsibility, having a responsibility towards the environment, how can telco industry help getting the environment better, and so on and so forth. And now it's really about connecting people to people, which had always been the telco idea, but now is also people to app to app, machines to machines, and this is a whole new area. And I think in talking to our customers, this is now also all the different customer groups that we serve as a company are now coming to us. It's the consumers on the one hand, it's the corporate customers, it's all our partners, and how can we make the telecommunication service more effectively. And since I worked on both sides of the fence, working internally, improving our own services, improving our own IT, and on the other hand, work with our customers, understanding what their needs are. It's really good to understand these both sides, and it is now really, for me, a next era of telecommunication here, and which has never been before. And thanks to the clouds and thanks to everybody who is part of that ecosystem, we have much more opportunities going forward. And 5G for us is a real game changer, in particular with corporate customers now. Yeah.
Wow, interesting, Bernd. And I think like you said, like even Alexander mentioned, there's so much change happening. There's always enough to look forward to in this space. And maybe that's what keeps all of us going too. Cornel, I'll come to you. You spent a majority of your significant experience with ARIS, which is obviously now Commscope. You're looking at multiple aspects. Many of the technologies that you work with, I had to actually write it down to, be able to enumerate them. You're looking at gigabit services. You're looking at, the cloud connection, end-to-end multi-screen, and not just that. You also lead, highly skilled engineers across different locations with different, maybe even service providers. So what has been your biggest learning over these years? And like we heard Alexander and Bernd, the times are getting more exciting going forward. So what is it that you believe you're going to apply going forward?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel, first and foremost. We definitely work in a very dynamic industry, and it's been a roller coaster for the last 15, 20 years, and it will continue to be so. So if excitement is definitely not something we miss in our industry. I guess two things I learned over the years, and some of the previous panelists talked about that, is one, the most important thing is to embrace change, and also to focus on user experience and to focus on the subscriber and make sure that they get the absolute best user experience. Our customers we need to focus on our customers, not directly necessarily on our customers, and that's it requires a certain amount of skills, and it requires us to think ahead a little bit, and make sure that we build and we provide our customers with the technologies they need to be successful. Certainly the world is in a tradition to gigabit and multi-gigabit services. And if we learned anything over the last year and a half, it's that the internet and connectivity is as fundamental to our way of living as electricity and running water. And I think while previously, I would say before the COVID crisis started, perhaps there was still some residual thinking that it's not as high a priority to have access to the internet. Now everybody from the government on down to real people and everybody now understands you need connectivity as much as you need water and as much as you need electricity in order to be successful and to be able to contribute in this new world. So that does generate a kind of a shift in thinking. It will force us to continue to reinvent ourselves. I mean, we have one of the things that keeps us going is that we have to reinvent ourselves as an industry every 5 to 10 years. We just finished talking about 5G, now we're talking about 6G, right? So and similar thing going on in the fixed access networks, right? We were delivering 100 megabits and now it's 1 gigabit is becoming table stakes, and it's going to be 3, 4, 5, 10 gigabits in the next few years. So we live in a world where priorities shift, and I think bandwidth is becoming table stakes. One of the things we need to pay attention to is that latency becomes more and more important, and it becomes the new currency, because we're at the point now where we can deliver so much bandwidth to our subscribers that we're kind of looking for services, and we're at the point where we need to think about new services that can take advantage of all this capacity that is being built. And that's going to be certainly a learning curve over the next few years.
Perfect, Cornel. Very interesting. Volker, I would like to come to you, right? So thank you for your very good introductory slides and the future, painting the future for us. Looking at those slides, I'm sure our audience would believe that you spent all your life on research, but you've actually done so much more, right? You've looked at sales, you looked at marketing, in fact, you've looked at finance as well. So one of the questions I had, Volker, is how do you think all of it is coming together and helping you do what you are doing right now, and especially in the future of 6G research?
Yeah, thank you, Sidhant. It's a wonderful question. I think from all my experience and the previous career journey as I have had, and a very colorful one, as you were kind enough to point out, this is an exciting moment in time, right? Because this is the time to frame the agenda of research for the next generation of networks, 6G. And so it's about unique opportunity, and unique opportunity to define a vision. And we need to start this really from the high ground. I think, Bernd, you said it, right? It's about serving society, mankind. It's about sustainable development goals as framed by the United Nations. So when you look at the European Union, I think we have now, which by the way, I think it's great. We have wonderful momentum and willingness to really transform the union in both digital dimension, digital transformation, going hand in hand with green transformation, right? And so this kind of sets the stage. And so our vision for 6G, and I'm happy to tell you that this is no longer just Nokia engaging in this regard, Nokia Bell Labs, but many of the partners we work with, we think alike. So when you look at EU HexaX project, we started from framing the research challenges more from a value angle. We said, let's look at key value indicators, key indicators of value, rather than just key performance indicators. I mean, we need performance indicators. Don't get me wrong, Cornel, I agree. We need to discuss latency and reliability and parameters in the technical sense, absolutely. But let's start from the high ground. Let's look at the problems we're trying to solve, the opportunities we have, and then kind of check, like from technology side, what are the performance parameters that would enable us to do that. So that, I think, is what it is. So summarizing, it's about making sure we really have a high ambition, the most powerful ambition that we could have in terms of objectives of sustainability and trustworthiness. And let's make sure we use the opportunity well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Volker. Prakash, I would love to come to you now. You spent more than 2 decades in the companies that maybe Volker is currently part of, with Nokia, with Motorola, and you very recently almost switched over and joined HARMAN. You've in fact played a key role in Nokia, especially on the 5G STEM small cell side. And we all know how successful that particular product is for Nokia. Now that you are on the tech solution provider zone, how do you see your prior industry experience, come together and help you going forward?
Thank you, Sidhant. So first of all, it's a pleasure to join this session with this distinguished panel from the industry. Appreciate your time and insights. And also, I would like to thank the audience for spending their time with us today. My telecom journey has nothing short of incredible. I mean, from 2G to 3G, 4G, and now 5G. Volker's already talking about 6G. I still remember back in the early 2000s, I was working for Motorola, and we were one of the first ones to come up with a video device, a video handset. Just to do a video call over a 384K bearer was surreal at that time. And now we are talking about multiple of gigs on a device wirelessly. That's amazing. I was also fortunate to have worked with leaders like Nokia and Motorola. They are the ones who set my telecom foundation. They are the reason for my passion in telecom. But like we are hearing the theme, telecom is much more beyond radio access now with the 5G open architecture, the O-RAN initiatives, There are a lot of new players, new entrants. The architecture is getting more complex. So it's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge. And like Volker is pointing out, there are more challenges to come in 6G. But one of the reasons of joining HARMAN was for me to go and get exposed beyond the traditional RAN, right? I mean, as these technologies are getting more complex, there is virtualization of network elements happening. Elements are being hosted on cloud platforms. There are a lot of open interfaces coming. If you look at the traditional cellular networks, for a given region, you had probably 2 or 3 vendors who built the network. Now, with the new, I want to call them the revolutionary networks from Daesh and from Rakuten, you will see that there are multiple vendors, even up to 10 vendors just doing the radio access part, right? That's a big change. It's a paradigm shift. I was reading an article a couple of days ago, and one of the analogies given was they're comparing this Open RAN initiative to a Lego set, wherein the operator actually can mix and match the different components coming in from different vendors and build a network. That's amazing. So I think I'm looking forward to be a part of this industry. HARMAN definitely is in the right position. Gajendra kind of alluded in his keynote to some of the strategic initiatives we have. I think with the domain expertise and our services capability, we can become the systems integrator to build this different Lego box into the networks of the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Prakash. I think I'm really excited now that, we all understand each of your experiences a lot more. I'll try and dive deeper into, the area that we want to really explore today. The first question I would like to, maybe I'll have Bernd field this question. The first thing we've seen is telecom is not just about phone calls anymore. It has become a vital part of even performing life-saving surgeries, consultations. It's become important just for our livelihood. The fact that we are in front of this video camera and microphone, it's become life and blood almost, right? And we are exploring more and more use cases around it. How do you believe that the network planning in itself is evolving? How is it catching up to so many newer use cases, and how are you even reimagining many of these digital experience? Bernd, we would like to start with you, and Volker, maybe you could take a shot at it next.
Yeah, and I think this is for our telco industry, I think is a real challenge, because we should now really design against customer requirements, against what does the customer really need. It has never been done, because before, I mean, the telco operators, they built networks and then they try to sell the networks. And so now it's a totally different game with all that new capabilities. The first thing is, how can I design against customer requirement? And this customer requirement, how do I catch the customer requirement? How do I get ideation in? How do I bring my traditional network teams into a customer-centric thinking? So there's a whole process going on in our company, and I think in many other companies. And so we recently announced a new chief digital officer to help us really think about from the customer point of view. And when it comes to what are our 3 targets, is one is really what we can offer, what is over the top services, with all that new bandwidth that we can offer, with all the new performance that the new networks and the devices, there's a lot of OTT service that we can instantly deploy to customers. And for instance, for a consumer customer, it could be like, I want to get Disney Channel now in here, but I haven't got a subscription for Disney Channel yet. So how can a telco help me to get just one button and I have Disney Channel? For a corporate customer, it could be a special security application on it, or an advanced security, an advanced virtual network function. So this is one area. I think the other area is really our own digitization. And with the SD everything, we think completely differently on traditional networks. And I think we can be much faster now much more agile organization, launch products even faster than before. And it's how amazing how 5G has taken up speed, and how far the telcos already rolled out this new technology. I mean, they're cheating a bit because it's not only pure 5G, we all know that, but at least it's much faster than before. And the third one is really our customer experience. And telcos had never been good in customer experience because we're coming from a legacy point of view, from more or less like an administration where 20 years ago, a customer needed to beg to become a customer, and then it took 6 weeks until the customer got a service. And only now we realize how important that is, how important the whole customer experience is, so that the customer really gets immediate service. Yeah, I'm asking myself why we have so big call centers still. Yeah, why can we not do a complete digital business on it? Because the whole technology in the back end is all digitized. Why not digitizing the customer interface? That's
wow, interesting, Bernd. Right from I like how you put it, right? So from the customers chasing the telecom service providers to it actually, completely turning the tables. Volker, the same question to you. What would be your take on this?
Yeah, with pleasure. So, Sidhant, thanks. And Bernd, building on what you said, I think, yes, indeed, it's about making sure we maximize customer experience. And I think the aspect I would like to add, I'm sure this is how top operators like BT think about it as well, is about maximizing value as well, right? So it ties into maximizing value. And of course, maybe reiterating some of the themes I shared in my keynote, we now have prerequisites in place, going beyond what we had with previous Gs, starting with 5G to make that happen, right? So microservice architecture, softwareization of the network, modularization in conjunction with virtual machines, containers, what they allow you to do, and that's the underlying technology proposition, is really to go and do upgrades with zero service impact. That's pretty cool, right? It's about independent scaling. It's about flexible instantiation and deployment. And, Prakash talked about the multi-vendor, multi-stakeholder ecosystem and architectural implementer landscape coming up. It's got to be interesting and fun in the sense of how do you make happen flexible instantiation deployment in an environment like that. And so that then ties into advanced mechanisms of orchestration, like, as I think mentioned earlier, like cloud capability discovery, but not just like within one stack, but across the architecture, including devices and even all the way down to chipset accelerator capability, right? And by the way, having said all this, it will also mean, and also that is very important, that we need to give diligent attention to security, cyber resilience aspects, especially when we move more and more to billions of sensors, millions of subnetworks. How do we really assure the right level of trust? And that actually ties into interesting questions for research. We have some good ideas at Bell Labs. I know there's some other folks doing research, how to smartly do this. And maybe we can discuss this more. But in summarizing, it's about infrastructure abstraction that allows you increasing degree of flexibility, all in the interest of serving the customer for top-notch experience and, of course, maximizing value impact for the customers we serve and beyond.
Perfect. Thank you, Volker. Cornel, I would like to come to you, right? And we heard how Bernd spoke about, the really tuning your services for the customer. Volker spoke about how it's important to look at, different tech aspects and how it can be implemented. What do you believe, how is the role of virtualization evolving? You've been at the forefront of technology on this part. How is the role of virtualization evolving, especially from an enabler of growth? How is it enabling these provision of services almost instantaneously, etc.? So I would love your take on this, Cornel, and I'll get Alexander as well on this after you.
So, I mean, I would say virtualization is a massive enabler for telecoms because it allows them to rapidly develop and deploy new services. And it does fundamentally change the time to market and return on investment equation. It allows operators to prototype faster, test faster, It allows them to take more risks, right, and avoid the risk aversity that kind of was a problem in the past in this industry. It allows them to think creatively about what type of services they want to offer in the future, and really put the subscriber at the center of their attention, right? How do we make our subscribers' life better, and everything flows from there, right? If you can deliver value and make subscribers' life easier, then people will buy your product or service. But in order to do that, you have massive competition out there. You have to be very agile, and therefore you have to adopt the right software stacks and the right technologies, and virtualization is definitely one big part of that equation in order to be able to compete in the future. There's a lot of effort going on around also finding the right compromise between what you virtualize, what are functions that can sit in the cloud, and what are functions that kind of have to stay or best belong at the edge, perhaps implemented in hardware, or perhaps using virtualized techniques that are kind of targeted at more edge deployments. I think different people have different opinions, right? But I do see a little bit of swinging back from let's virtualize everything to perhaps let's keep the PHY and some of the basic Mac functions that require very high speed and processing power and very low latency, perhaps keeps those in hardware, and then move everything that's control plane, everything that's kind of higher level into virtualized functions sitting in the cloud or sitting in. And when I say cloud, it's a cloud that includes a data center, but also includes edge computing infrastructure that I think service providers have a massive opportunity to start building because they are close to the subscriber. So I think that's probably the key. I hit the key points there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cornel. That was pretty insightful. Alexander, I would love to get your thoughts on the same question and the role of virtualization and how it's evolving.
Yeah. We currently see a very strong push towards these kind of disaggregated networks that go along with virtualization in a certain sense. And there are different reasons for that. One is that in the last years, we saw quite a consolidation among the infrastructure vendors. Secondly, we heard Cornel say earlier that internet and connectivity are as important as fresh water and energy, and that's true. And looking at the world population, we have something like 5.2 billion unique subscribers. We have more than 3.5 billion that currently do not have access. And there are different reasons for that. And it's only a certain small percentage of about 500 million that don't have coverage. The others are simply not able to afford it. And so we need to have more flexibility also in our networks to be able to address those groups that are currently not able to afford and thus are simply cut off from communication, which is so important. So what is happening is that the previously very monolithic networks are being chopped up into pieces right now, where the radio unit is quite disjunct from the core network, and where there's no flexibility to work with different vendors of radio units, different classes also, to enable more flexibility, also more innovation there. So as it comes to us as Rohde & Schwarz, we're working with groups like the ORAN Alliance, and also with our customers, both on the network vendor and on the network operator side, to now make sure that this mix and match, and I heard earlier this statement of a Lego. Yes, it's a Lego, but it's a Lego with billions of tuning screws. And the interesting bit is now we need to agree on a common set for those tuning screws, because it doesn't help that you get a baseband from Nokia and you get a radio unit from somebody else and you have Commscope working with it, and then those things don't fit together. So we need to agree on a kind of, maybe can call it a language or a language set to make sure that all those components are able to talk to each other. And for this, we need to agree on compromises. And this is why it's so important to have the standardization, and to have also then conformance test scenarios that make sure that all the individual bits and pieces that are lined up in the end to a network work each and individually and then in the end-to-end scenario. And this is where we like to contribute.
Wow, that was very interesting take, Alexander. I think from the thoughts that all of you have put together, firstly from a business side, it has changed completely. Technology side, there is so much SDN going in, and we spoke about security. So there's so much going on, and I think we are in a state of flux right now. So I would like to move in and kind of think about what is maybe going to happen in almost like the near future, right? So there's this whole shift happening, and we discussed that. So maybe I'll just come to Prakash first, right? So Prakash, how do you think this is going to play out in the future? Maybe in the near future, we know in 2030, Volker is giving a 6G, but in the near future, how is it playing out?
Yeah, I think, this whole virtualization and moving the network elements to cloud is not new. I think the northbound tools, especially like the OSS and the BSS, have been running on cloud for a while. And in the last few years, the core network has also operated or has also migrated to the cloud. But what is new is the talk about implementing high bandwidth, low latency radio access to public cloud, and in some cases like edge cloud or whatever the nearest cloud is, right? So that's, I think, the new and the latest buzz in telecom about open radio access, where this whole, Alexander talked about it, the whole traditional cellular base station is now offered by a host of new vendors in terms of Lego blocks. Of course, the fine tuning is needed, like Alexander pointed out. But that's a big paradigm shift for us. Public cloud providers. This gives entry to a lot of new players. Hyperscalers. We have traditional IT infrastructure providers like Dell and VMware and Intel now getting into the arena. We have some disruptive startups like Mavenir who are trying to come up with their own products and services. But I think from a industry perspective, one of the main initiatives of O-RAN was to lower the cost of deployment by increasing competition in a segment that was typically dominated by 3 or 4 vendors, depending on the region globally, right? And the latest momentum from Rakuten and Dish, I think, has forced these top tier OEMs to either be part of the ecosystem or be left out. And the whole lure of low-cost networks and potential savings in billions of dollars over the years has forced the mobile network operators to pursue or push towards the O-RAN route, right? But having said that, the top telecom vendors have decades of experience building highly scalable, reliable commercial cellular networks, and that's not easy, right? They very well know the pitfalls of a multi-vendor environment. And this whole O-RAN kind of sets the stage for a new telecom era for this Lego building blocks, right? You'll have a lot of players now offering hardware, software, services, and albeit, this is going to drive innovation. There will be a lot of new use cases and application in verticals that were never part of the telecom domain. So I think it's going to take a while till all of the radio access elements get onto a cloud, but it will happen. It's just a matter of time.
Interesting, Prakash. So Bernd, coming from BT, right? So everybody loves this story about how, the elephant is being taken on by a swarm of bees. We spoke about different Lego blocks, different innovators, a niche in their own area, trying to take on these behemoths. What is it that you believe is the future, and maybe some interesting aspects on maybe how large telecom providers are looking at it?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely, this whole SD technologies have offered really capabilities now, because we all know you can separate now the data plane from the control plane, from the management plane. And then you can decide where to put certain things. And in terms of data plane, you also need to think about what do you need in an inline data connectivity in terms of network function, security function, telemetry function, and all of that. And if you bring that all together, we now think about a bucket, where to put what. And it's not only a technology decision, because one is really what is technology helping us, where is it feasible to put some sort of virtual network function into a public cloud on AWS or on Google, Azure, and whatsoever. But it's also about what is the service model then behind, because we need to completely change our service model from an on-prem service model into a mixed or hybrid service model. What is the security around it? How can we save security? Because security for telecom operator security is one of the biggest differentiator. If we anyhow lose security, we lose reputation in the market, because communication should be private for sure. It's seen by the law. And the next is really the cost that is associated, because the hyperscalers have different commercial models than a traditional telco operator has, and how can we best make use of the commercial model. Give you an example. If you put data into a cloud, it's for free. If you take data out, you pay. So as long as these commercial models are as they are, we really need to carefully look at it. And the last is really, again, what does that bring in terms of employee and user experience? And in the end, it ends up with the final big question: what should a telco own in the next decade? Yeah, where should we build and invest? Where should we become asset light? Where shall we really be? And there's also, I think, a question which is not finally solved, and we are thinking about how should an asset light company look like? How should really an asset heavy company look like? And probably reality is somewhere in between. And on the traditional OSS and BSS, so really the support systems that control the whole customer journey, this is now blurred with the SD technologies, because there's no longer separation between the network and the overlaying CRM function, more or less. And what all the telcos, I think, make use of is all these new low-code SaaS solutions, because this enables us to bring a customer experience much quicker to our customers than ever before. And so also on that OSS, BSS stack, there's massive changes. And I think the final thing, there's no final answer yet. And I think with many telcos, think about how should a new operating model look like, and where to invest. And not only invest money, you need to invest in people, in education, in experience, and all of that. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Thank you, Bernd. I think there's a lot of things going on, and one of the things that we've heard a lot, and we've got some audience questions as well, is around what you spoke about. Putting data in is free, taking out is difficult, and there's so much data that we need to manage. You also spoke about, hey, how can the backend be really modified, etc. There's a lot of talk around artificial intelligence, how data needs to be used, security, etc. So I would love to get Alexander's thoughts on this, right? So what do you believe are the best practices in managing and leveraging data, artificial intelligence, machine learning around this? And after that, I would love to hear from Volker as well on the same aspect.
Okay. Yeah, so for the looking at the use of AI in network planning and in self-healing networks, I mean, we have the topic of self-organizing networks that's in 3GPP since a long time, and we probably have some people on the call who know that longer than I do. So, and it's implemented, but still it doesn't fully automatically run. I was at Mobile World Congress the other week, and there was a lot of discussion about the fully autonomous network. So we're not fully there yet. And it's my very strong belief that, I mean, people just don't fully trust an AI to optimize their network, at least not if there's a customer at the end who might call, and then something's not working and you don't know exactly why. So there will always be a need to also measure and to optimize, and we internally also use AI as part of our mobile network testing solutions, where we go in the field and measure. But we use AI in a way that we compare the actual measurements against what we would expect based on an AI algorithm. And then we see, are there any anomalies in the network performance? And then we pinpoint on those. And with that, we are able to, out of this massive amount of data that is generated through a test drive, really to bring it down to a certain point. Okay, this is where one operator now needs to focus and fix it. And so I think that's a very good compromise between having a, in general, self-organizing network, but then also having somebody who's overlooking that with a second opinion, just to make sure that the network doesn't completely act on its own.
Perfect. Thank you, Alexander. Volker, your thoughts on this, please?
Yes, with pleasure. So maybe adding some additional aspects and color on top of what Alexander, you rightfully shared. I guess maybe two things. One, we're starting with AI ML and the relevance for the 30s. And maybe to illustrate the vision we have, technology vision now, it's really maybe best illustrated with the physical layer, radio interface. So when you look at what we do today at Nokia 5G actually, we optimize a variety of algorithms with machine learning AI today, such as packet scheduling, beamforming, many more examples. Now, the revolutionary approach would be, what if, and we are working on this, could we take the entire physical layer and optimize it, everything included, including like degree of variance of the components you might have. And that would be like interesting element for game change, right? So go beyond point algorithm, really do the entire physical layer, AI nativeness. That's the slogan, right? That's maybe one element I would add. And then maybe coming back to more the aspect of data information architecture, more generally speaking. I think the other trend we see, and it's powerful, it will reach into the 30s, it's about data information services being distributed throughout the network, right? So as to support distributed AI ML decision making, right? And it ties into what I think Cornel was getting at earlier, this relevance of premium services like low latency, especially for special purpose operations. So that then allows you options of dynamic reconfigurability. It means changing placement, resources of services and functions while in operation. And that, by the way, is another interesting point we need to keep in mind. All of this while in operation, right? That's part of the paradigm of the future. So governed and orchestrated by AI ML-based decision-making units, which will emerge across all layers, cover all parts of the networks. I think that's part of the vision. And once you then dive deeper, of course, you come up with all kinds of ideas and needs, such as making sure that the approach minimizes the latency between generation of an event data point and its relevant analysis / inference, right? And that then means you probably need local analysis. You don't need to share continuously over the network. It also means you need to revisit questions of statelessness and ultra-fast persistent storage, so as to maintain certain information of system status. And by the way, when you apply all this discussion to security and cybersecurity, it gets very interesting as well. We could dive deeper in many ways, but that's part of how I would answer the question. So clearly, AI and leveraging data is a key aspect to keep in mind when we're now shaping and framing kind of what the system should be for the 30s.
Perfect. Thank you, Volker. Now, what I'll do is, I'll get into, some of even the audiences seem to be asking questions around this. We have seen almost the first deployments of 5G being into private 5G networks. And Cornel, I would like to get your take on this to start with. What do you see are the challenges in building and rolling out these 5G private networks?
Yeah, I think a key challenge, certainly for us in Europe, is the regulatory environment and the fact that we have different regulatory regimes. It's a problem even when you think about the type of enterprises that are let's say, viable and that would be looking into the type of private 5G deployments, they are typically multinationals having a presence in different places, and for them, dealing with different regulatory regimes is definitely not something that they wanna staff up for and deal with. So I think that's been a challenge so far. And different spectrum allocations, obviously, in different places, that doesn't help. Also, technology-wise, I mean, enterprises have widely adopted Wi-Fi, and it's a very well-known quantity for them. So private 5G has to deliver real value when going up against Wi-Fi 6 and potentially Wi-Fi 7 in the near future. Definitely there are points of value there, right? Improved latency, improved roaming capabilities, improved security. I think those are things that that private LTE and 5G networks really can bring to the table and provide. And there's enough differentiation there to build a value proposition. But on the other hand, enterprise decision makers are not necessarily fully familiar with 5G architecture and technology details. So they have to rely on service providers and vendors to provide the cloud-based control and configuration of their network. There sometimes is a bit of reluctance to kind of outsource that capability to a service provider or a vendor. And on the other hand, I guess the reverse of that coin is that dealing with the security implications is something that that is probably best left to professionals in general and best left to people that do this every day in, day out. And that's where the value of having a service provider and a vendor behind that private 5G proposition is very valuable. So it's really a two-way street. I think there are challenges, but I think there's enough differentiation and enough benefits there that private 5G networks really have will take off.
Interesting. Thank you, Cornel. Prakash, you've seen this aspect in different places, and now, of course, at HARMAN, I'm sure you've looked at these challenges across different sets of customers. So, what would be your take on the 5G network and its challenges? The private network.
I think, Cornel definitely touched on most of the challenges, but I think those challenges are not new. They existed in 4G and now being carried over to 5G. But one thing that's happening with 5G is the benefits of the 5G technology is now enabling new verticals to start deploying their own private networks. And that's probably a key of why there is so much talk about 5G private networks, right? I mean, the 5G technology benefits are like high bandwidth carriers, services-based architecture, network slicing, improved reliability, massive capacity. All this is opening up new applications and use cases for private 5G. In fact, the standards like the release 16 and release 17, they address some of the key requirements for URLLC, industrial IoT. I think Volker touched about that. Vehicle to infrastructure requirements. They have some specific on positioning. So all this, I see them as the key building blocks of future 5G private networks, okay? And these foundations are going to enable applications in Industry 4.0. They are going to do remote healthcare monitoring, connected vehicle, autonomous driving. These are some of the applications I see having tremendous growth potential for 5G private networks. But in terms of challenges, Cornel pointed out spectrum definitely is one of the keys. US was one of the first to come up with the shared spectrum in CBRS. I believe in Europe now they have 3.5 gigahertz targeted specifically to boost enterprise 5G private networks. We have touched another aspect, the privacy and security is the key. Then another one is interworking and seamless connectivity. Cornel kind of touched on that as well. Most of these enterprises, they have already a legacy network existing. That could be the LTE, it could be some kind of an IoT, it could be Wi-Fi. Now you want to bring in 5G because of all the technology benefits that it offers. Making sure that this 5G new network peacefully coexists with your legacy networks is, I think, another challenge. Last but not the least, the device ecosystem is still not mature. When I say device, I'm talking about devices for 5G other than the handsets, right? They are still evolving. I mean, we need extremely low power consuming devices. They should have a longer battery life if they're battery operated. And more importantly, they should be reasonably priced, right? So device ecosystem has its own set of challenges too. But as more and more networks are being deployed and we leverage the economies of scale, I'm sure these challenges would be dealt one by one.
Perfect. And thank you, Prakash, for that very articulate, points that you mentioned. Alexander, I would like to get you in, and I know you wanted to share some experiences on the private 5G network as well. So why don't you start with that and also continue into my next question? And we see that especially the participants are real technology leaders or budding technology leaders. What do you think are the key aspects that they need to focus on to build a strong network of the future? Can you take that question, and maybe you can start with your thoughts on private 5G and get into this question.
Yeah, I like to elaborate a little bit on private 5G on industrial shop floors. Rohde and Schwarz is we have a license for a 5G network. We have our own small private network in our Teisnach factory. For two reasons. First of all, to learn about our customers' pain points, and secondly, also for our own use. So we are also starting to use this in very productive fashion. But looking at the challenges, I mean, typically shop floor is full of metal, and metal is the worst case that you can have in a network planning because it reflects, it shadows, and so on and so on. And then you have also moving parts of metal, like these small delivery trains that move stuff around. You have people, and you have if it's a dynamic shop floor, people tend to rearrange also things. And all those aspects require continuous monitoring of the performance of the simple coverage, so the signal strength, but also throughput and latency, which are the three key important parameters. And secondly, I like to come to the aspect of security, because when you think about security, you typically think about firewalls and software and things like that, and making sure you keep the people out. But as people trying to steal your car, they may have a very elaborate copy of your RF remote car opener, but other people just use a hammer. And the same applies to networks. I mean, you have the software intrusion risk, but you also have people just putting a very high power transmitter to your production plant and turning down your whole connectivity for about a day, which easily costs you $1 million or more, and is maybe worth the invest in a cheap jammer from China. Yeah? And so also having a possibility to track those guys fast and to catch them and switch them off is really important. So it's not just the software side of things.
Thank you so much, Alexander. I think those were very interesting, and thank you for sharing the detailed slides as well. I'm sure it has been, it's very enriching for the audience as well. Cornel, I would love to come to you and get your thoughts on what are the key aspects that you think tech leaders have to focus on for the next generation of successful networks.
That's a good question, because there's a lot of things to talk about, but I'll probably go back to one of the things I said in my opening statement, which is focus on user experience and focus on the subscriber, and deliver the best combination of user experience and price value, right, to the subscriber. I think they need to keep that at the center of their attention all the time, because competition is out there, and people are very innovative. We live in a very innovative industry. With a lot of operators trying different things, and also a lot of investments coming in and trying to overbuild and penetrate the market with different value propositions. Operators need to also leverage their strengths. One of the things that they have is they're close to the subscriber, both from a physical perspective. They have a presence at the edge for fixed and mobile operators, and that creates a possibility for edge computing and the activation of low latency services that that need to rely on that edge computing infrastructure. I think that's a unique opportunity for service providers, which some of them have identified and are moving in that direction. Others are still kind of looking at it, but I believe that's a big potential step change in that the improvement of that user experience and the activation of new services. They also have a billing relationship with their subscribers, and they have the trust. They have to monetize that trust, or try to activate that trust, if you wish, because subscribers trust their service providers in ways that they don't necessarily trust people like Amazon, Facebook, Google, and others, right? So I think there's an opportunity there to make sure that service providers understand subscribers' privacy, take it much more seriously than others. They don't sell subscribers' data for a living, which is a good start. So their business model does not rely on sharing people's data, and that's a very important. I think in the future it should be a very important consideration. I think operators need to deliver value ultimately, and they need to make it easy for subscribers to adopt and navigate new technologies. Things like smart home and other new exciting technologies aren't taking off in the way they should, because sometimes there's a barrier to entry, a barrier to understanding. And I think service providers have potentially a very good role to play in kind of enabling the mass market deployment of some of these technologies. In terms of like their core interests and network build out, let's say, I would say they need to make sure that they avoid reinventing the wheel, right? They need to look at what others are doing, and they need to select the right software stacks and the right hardware platforms that allow them to be fast, to be agile, and to deliver services as I think you said earlier, instantaneously, right? If possible. They need to think about services and capabilities. They need to build the network of tomorrow, not today. And they need to treat vendors, which is sometimes a problem, as partners, right? They need to look at the 5 to 10 year horizon and not just the bottom line, because we are in this industry. We need to innovate together, and without a close partnership with it between telecoms and vendors, I think that becomes much harder. Right? So that would be my take on this.
Great, thank you so much, Cornel. I would like to come to Bernd and then give the final say to Prakash on this one. So we've looked at different ecosystem players, the equipment providers, the software integrators, the service providers. So Bernd, in your mind, how do you think this whole ecosystem should work together and build the network of the future?
Yeah, I think what we have discussed and what we all see is that the digital technologies and the software-defined technologies and all the cloud is really leading to blurring again between digital solutions from our technology partners, from any platform operator, from us as a telco operators, from the system integrators, but even from customers' platforms, because for instance, in the B2B environment, even customers want to seamlessly integrate their services into our services and make it a full end-to-end solution. I think also what we see in the market, that startups play an important role here, because they have a good idea, they see a gap within existing technologies, a gap with what probably the bigger ones present. They can quickly develop software that immediately fits into the gap, and with the help of the cloud again, they can even operate it and offer it as a SaaS service. What we really do is we doing three things. One is we blueprint our requirement, and we early engage with technology providers and other partners to find out who would be the right partners for these end-to-end blueprints based on the customer requirement. Next step is then really to start a co-creation phase and for instance, in the B2B environment, co-creation even involves the customer. And if we talk about private 5G, it is really a co-creation between the customers, the technology partners, the operators, and some innovative software vendors to bring together on the table, work together on the use cases and also on the business case, because business case is also very important. And 5G also have alternative technologies like Wi-Fi, like LoRa and others to think about. So that's I think important. And finally, it's about integrating really the platforms, make it a seamless experience for our customers, offering the customer a defined API and a defined portal and a defined platform. And there everybody has to play the role now. And I think this is very important. And this is probably new, because historically you selected a vendor, you get the kit, you put the kit into your data center, and then you turn it on and build your service on it. And now it's in a very early phase. It's a close co-creation here.
Perfect. Thank you, Bernd. Prakash, the same question to you. And I know we are just at the top of the time that we have taken from all of you. I think we'll just extend by 5 minutes. I have one final question for Volker. It includes the audience questions that we have. So Prakash, over to you for the same question, please.
Thank you, Sidhant. I'll try to keep it short, but I think Bernd put it pretty well. I mean, he's seeing it from the service provider end, and there are a lot of players. There are a lot of new players, new technologies, innovation coming in the mix. Collaboration is happening to some extent. It starts with the standards. I mean, that's where all the players that you mentioned come together and agree on a common spec. There is also ORAN Alliance, wherein they are pushing towards a more virtualized and a fully interoperable radio access network. But as they say, I mean, with all these players, the proof is in the pudding. Commercial success of Rakuten and Dish is going to play a critical role in defining the future networks. But as the ecosystem expands with new players, new solutions, I feel that differentiation is going to be a challenge, right? Between these different vendors, differentiation is definitely going to be a challenge. It will boil down to, in this ecosystem, which is that player who has the most open interfaces and can interoperate with the most OEMs in that space. I think he will probably be the winner. And this is where HARMAN can help. I mean, with our 5G Center of Excellence, our domain expertise, and our systems integration services, we can work with different players to accelerate the build out of future networks.
Excellent, Prakash. Thank you so much for that. And as I promised, just one final question. And we've had a few audience questions are also around the same area, especially on 6G. I think everybody seems to be excited about that. Alexander also referred to it in his slides. So Volker, what specific challenges do you think 6G will solve that 5G would still not be able to, number one? And also in your 2030 vision, what are the key challenges in that vision itself? So yeah, over to you, Volker, for the final word on this one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sidhant. So, I think it's all about opportunity. It's all about opportunity. It starts with a vision. And maybe to also take into account some of the questions as had been asked, probably first part, what we need to reiterate is the fact that we have another 8 years to go with 5G, right? There was a question from the audience, how can we fix uplink? And it's a very good question. Now, I'm very positive. We have some ideas on Bell Labs. I can tell you, in case you're not aware, we have some good momentum with 3GPP release 18. So we will see some additional innovation where it needs to happen, even as part of 5G evolution, number one. Number two, another key aspect to be kept in mind, there's nothing wrong with that. We have seen this with the previous Gs. There's always kind of a spillover, right? There's some ambitions we don't fully get done. Some things we don't get done the full agenda with 5G, right? It's happened with 4G, it'll happen with 5G. Statistically speaking, 25% maybe of the ambition will kind of move into 6G. But you know what? And this is really where the answer to your question comes in, Sidhant. You need to focus on the disruptive new opportunity. We need to focus on what are the true opportunities, and I agree, challenges too, for mankind in the 30s. How can we help the world act together? And how can we help tackle challenges in the dimension of sustainability, trustworthiness, but of course, at the same time, build the best possible networks for the next decade with millions of sub-networks. We discussed this, reinventing value chain. I think that hasn't popped up. Just to maybe highlight this very briefly, I see lots of opportunity to connect, to interconnect, link, like wide area into millions of sub-networks in new ways, thereby overcoming linear value chains. Maybe discuss this in the next Zinnov event. So summarizing, it's all about opportunity. Let's focus on the visionary part, such as designing for networks for both communications and sensing. And last but not least, let's make sure we do this in the spirit of collaboration, pre-competitive collaboration. This is far out. There is no risk of competition at this time. Let the best ideas win. Let's make it happen. Thank you, Sidhant. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Volker. I think that truly summarizes this very interesting roundtable that we've had. I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every panelist and also the audience members who have been patient with us. I know we've not been able to answer some of your questions. We would like to just get back to you over an email on some of them. So thank you very much, all the panelists. I would like to give it back to Natalia for a formal closing note and a thank you note from our side. Over to you, Natalia.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sidhant, for moderating this panel. And thank you so much to all the panelists for a very, very insightful and engaging discussion. If I had to quickly summarize, I'm not an expert, but I used to work for HTC. Funny fact, the key takeaways from today's discussion would be that the telecom industry has to accept that it needs to literally reinvent itself every 5 years. It's a very fast changing environment. Also, latency is becoming the new currency. I love that quote. The customer experience has shifted dramatically from having customers chase telecom companies, now seeing the opposite and focusing on giving customers immediate assistance. We are very impatient, myself included. And in that regard, I guess we need to transition from huge call centers to more digitized alternatives. We also touched upon privacy and security. We're on private 5G networks for enterprises, which is key, as well as having them coexist with their existing Wi-Fi or LTE networks. Operators need to make it easier for subscribers to understand new technology to surpass those entry barriers. We saw how the telecom industry has evolved from offering new services and deploying them. Telcos have digitalized themselves to stay relevant. And so we understand how all the details involved in virtualization, cloud, and how data and AI holds a lot of potential that is yet to be unleashed. And finally, we need to build the network of tomorrow, not today. Look into the future and innovate together. I think Volker said, let ideas like run wild, and we need to work together and not against each other. I personally cannot wait to get past the current happenings, to be present in 2030 and experience that famous and powerful 6G. So thank you once again to all the speakers and to all our attendees for staying here with us until the end. I'm sure that you all have a lot of very insightful takeaways from today, just like I do. If you have any questions, you can reach us at events@zinnov.com. That's the information. And we will get back to you as quickly as possible because we could only take a couple of questions in the interest of time. And we'll be sharing the video recording after the event with all of you who attended. So once again, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe. We'll see you soon in the next event.